All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Goodnight reading series of Wuthering Heights. I'm very excited to continue on with this story as we are getting very close to the conclusion of it all. So, just a quick little synopsis. I'm going to go very, very quickly if you're new here. So, basically, Wuthering Heights, we as the audience are technically Mr. Lockwood. So, Mr. Lockwood is a guy who is living on Mr. Heathcliff's land. So Mr. Heathcliff is an enigma in a sense, and he is very much not a normal gentleman by many standards. He's not a good person by any means. And so Mr. Lockwood is hearing the tale of Mr. Heathcliff, how he became to be, and he's hearing this tale through his housekeeper, Mrs. Dean, also referred to in the story as Nellie. And Nellie has told us that, she ended up getting a charge that she's kind of been tasked with dealing with, Catherine. And Catherine is the daughter of a woman who Mr. Heathcliff absolutely loved and adored. However, Catherine ended up with a different person and had her daughter, Catherine, with this person. And the woman that Mr. Heathcliff loved ended up passing away in childbirth. So Mr. Heathcliff is still pretty mad that, the woman of his dreams passed away. And it seems like he's hell-bent on destroying pretty much everybody and everything. I don't really get his intense vendetta that he has. So he has a son with a different person. And the son is kind of really feeble. His name is Linton. And Linton starts talking with the girl Catherine and kind of getting to know her, and it's come to a point where this girl Catherine is really interested in him, and she goes out of her way to meet Linton, and it turns out it was a setup. So Mr. Heathcliff ends up trapping her at Wuthering Heights, which is the big estate that he owns, and he says, won't let you leave, Catherine, because you need to marry my son, Linton. This needs to happen. And she's like, why are you doing this? I was going to marry him anyway. This is really strange and bizarre of you. Why would you do this to me? And it is bizarre. It is very strange. And at the same time, Catherine's really upset because her father is very sick. And she didn't want to be stuck at Wuthering Heights. So that's kind of where we are right now. So she's just stuck in this situation. And we're still learning everything through Mr. Lockwood's eyes. So as always, let's saddle in and get ready for another reading of Wuthering Heights. Chapter 28. On the fifth morning, or rather afternoon, a different step approached, lighter and shorter. And this time the person entered the room. It was Zillah, donned in her scarlet shawl with a black silk bonnet on her head and a willow basket swung to her arm. "Hi, dear, Mrs. Dean," she exclaimed. "Well, there's talk about you at Gimmerton. I never thought you were sunk in a black horse march, and Missy with you. Oh, till master told me that you'd been found, and he lodged ye here. What? Oh, you must have got on an island, sure. And how long were you in the hole? Did master save you, Mrs. Dean? But you're so thin. You've not been so poorly, have you?" "Your master is a true scoundrel," I replied. "But he shall answer for it. He needn't have raised that tale. Shall all be laid bare." "What do you mean?" asked Zillah. "It's not his tale that they are saying in the village, about you being lost in the marsh, and I calls to Earnshaw when I came in. They are queer things, Mr. Hareton, happened since I went off. It's a sad pity that the likely young lass and Cantanelli Dean, as I said." Well, he started at that, and I thought that he had not heard aught, so I told him the rumour. And then the master listened, and he just smiled to himself and said, "If they have been in the marsh, then they are out now, Zillah. Nellie Dean is lodged at this minute in your room. You can tell her to flit. when you go up to her, "Here's the key. The bog water got into her head." And she would have run home, quite flighty, but I fixed her till she came around to her senses. You can bid her go to the Grange at once, if she be able to, and carry a message from me that her young lady will eventually follow in time to attend the squire's funeral. "Aye, Mr. Edgar is not dead?" I gasped. "Oh, Zillah! Oh, Zillah!" "No, no, sit you down, my good mistress," she replied. "You're right sickly yet. He's not dead, but Dr. Kenneth thinks that he may last another day. I met him on the road and asked about him." Instead of sitting down, I snatched my outdoor things and hastened for below. On entering the house, I looked about for some form of information of where Catherine lay. The place was filled with sunshine, and the door stood wide open, but nobody seemed at hand. As I hesitated whether to go off at once or to return and seek my mistress, a slight cough drew my attention to the hearth. Linton laid on the settle, the sole tenant, sucking on a stick of sugar candy and pursuing my movements with apathetic eyes. "Where's Miss Catherine?" I demanded sternly, supposing I could frighten him into giving intelligence by catching him thus alone. He sucked on the sugar like an innocent. "Is she gone?" "No," he replied. "She's upstairs. She's not to go, and, well, we won't let her." "You won't let her, you little idiot!" I exclaimed. "Direct me to her room immediately, or I'll make you sing out sharply." "Oh, Papa would make you sing out sharply if you attempted to get there," he answered. "He says I'm not to be soft with Catherine, that she's my wife, and it's shameful that she should wish to leave me. He says that she hates me and she wants me to die, that she may lost my money, and that she shan't have it, and she shan't go home. She never will. Oh, she may cry and be sick as much as she pleases." He resumed his former occupation, closing his lids as he meant to drop asleep. "Master Heathcliff," I resumed, "have you forgotten all Catherine's kindnesses to you? Last winter, when you affirmed you loved her, and when she brought you books and sung you songs, and came many a time through the wind and the snow to see you, she wept amiss one evening, oh, because you wouldn't be disappointed, yeah. And you felt then that she was 100 times too good to you, and now you believe that the lies your father tells you. Oh, though you know how he detests you both, don't you? And you join him against her. Ah, that's fine gratitude, isn't it not?" The corner of Linton's mouth fell, and he took the sugar candy from his lips. "Did she come to Wuthering Heights because she hated you?" I continued. "Think for yourself. As for your money, she does not even know that you have any to your name. And you say she's sick, and yet you leave her alone up there in a strange house. You, who have felt what it is to be so neglected. You could pity your own sufferings, and she pitied them too. But you won't pity hers. Oh, I shed tears, Master Heathcliff. You see, an elderly woman and a servant merely, and you, after pretending such affection and having reason to worship her, almost store up every tear that you have for yourself, and lie there quite at ease. Ah, you are a heartless, selfish boy." "I can't stay with her," he answered crossly. "I'll not stay by myself. She cries so, and I just can't bear it, and she won't give over, though I say I'll call my father. I did call him once, and he threatened to strangle her if she was not quiet. But she began again, and the instant he left the room, moaning and grieving all night long, though I screamed for vexation that I couldn't sleep." "Well now, is Mr. Heathcliff out?" I inquired, perceiving the wretched creature had no power to sympathize with his cousin's mental tortures. "He's in the court," he replied, "talking to Dr. Kenneth, who says that uncle is dying, truly at last. I'm glad, for I shall be master of the Grange after him, and Catherine always spoke of it as her house. It isn't hers, it's mine. Papa says everything that she has is mine. All her nice books are mine. She offered to give them to me, and her pretty birds, and her pony Minnie, if I would get the key of our room and let her out, but I told her that she had nothing to give. They were all mine, all mine. And then she had cried, and took a little picture from her neck and said that I should have that. They were 2 pictures in a gold case, one on her side and her mother on the other. Uncle, they were young, she said to me. That was yesterday. I said that they were mine, too, and tried to get them from her. The spiteful thing wouldn't let me. She pushed me off and hurt me. I shrieked out, and that frightens her so. She heard Papa coming, and she broke the hinges, and divided the case, and gave to me her mother's portrait. The other she attempted to hide, but Papa asked what was the matter, and I explained it, and he took the one that I had away, and ordered her to resign hers to me. She refused, and he struck her down, and wrenched it from the chain, and crushed it with his foot. Ah, and are you pleased with that to see her struck so? I said. I winked. I winked to see my father strike a dog or a horse. Oh, he does it so hard. Yet I was glad at first that she deserved punishing for pushing me. But when Papa was gone, she made me come to the window and showed me her cheek cut on the side, against her teeth, and her mouth falling with blood. And then she gathered up the bits of the picture and went and sat down with her face to the wall. And she has never spoken to me since then, and I sometimes think she can't speak for pain. I don't like to think so, but she's a naughty thing for crying and continually looking so pale and wild. I am afraid of her, I must admit. Ah, and ye can get the key if you choose, I said. Yes, but that is when I am upstairs. But I can't walk upstairs right now. Well then, what apartment is it? I asked. Oh, he cried, I shan't tell you where it is. It is our secret. Nobody, neither Heaton nor Zillah, are to know. There, you've tired me. Go away. And then he turned his face into his arm and shut his eyes again. I considered it best to depart without seeing Mr. Heathcliff, and bring a rescue for my young lady from the Grange. On reaching it, the astonishment of my fellow servants to see me, and their joy also, was intense. And when they heard that their little mistress was safe, 2 or 3 were about to hurry up and shout the news at Mr. Edgar's door. But I bespoke the announcement of it myself. How changed I found him, even in those days. He lay in an image of sadness and resignation, awaiting his own death. Very young he looked then, though his actual age was 39. One would have called him 10 years younger at least. He thought of Catherine, for he murmured her name. I touched his hand and spoke. Catherine is not coming, dear master, I whispered. She is alive, and well, and will be here, I hope, tonight. I trembled at the first effects of this intelligence. He half rose up, looked eagerly around the apartment, and then sunk back down into a swoon. As soon as he recovered, I related our compulsory visit, and the detention at the Heights, and then I said that Heathcliff forced me to go in, which was not quite true. I uttered as little as possible against Linton, nor did I describe all his father's brutal conduct, my intentions being to add no bitterness, but if I could help it, to his already overflowing cup. He divined that one of his enemy's purposes was to secure the personal property as well as the estate to his son, or rather himself. Yet why did he not wait till his decease was a puzzle to thy master? Because ignorant is how nearly he and his nephew would quit the world together. However, he felt that his will had better been altered instead of leaving Catherine's fortune at her own disposal. He determined to put it in the hands of the trustees, for her to use during life, and for her children as well, if she had any after her. By that means, it could not fall to Mr. Heathcliff should Linton die. Having received his orders, I dispatched a man to fetch the attorney, and 4 more, provided with serviceable weapons, to demand my young lady of her jailer. Both parties were delayed very late. The single servant returned first. He said Mr. Green, the lawyer, was out when he arrived at his house, and when he had to wait 2 hours for his re-entrance, and then Mr. Green told him that he had a little business in the village that must be done first, but he would be at Thrushcross Grange before morning. The 4 men came back unaccompanied also. They brought word that Catherine was ill, too ill to quit her room, and Heathcliff would not suffer them to see her. I scolded the stupid fellows well for listening to that tale, which I would not carry to my master, resolving to take the whole bevy up to the heights at daylight, and storm it, literally, under the prisoner, where she lay quietly. Her father shall see her, I vowed, and I vowed again, if that devil be killed on his own door-stones in trying to prevent it. Happily I was spared the journey and the trouble. I had gone downstairs at 3 o'clock to fetch a jug of water, and passing through the hall with it in my hand, when a sharp knock on the front door made me jump. "Oh, it is Mr. Green," I said, recollecting myself. "Only Green," and I went on, intending to send somebody else to open it, but the knock was repeated, not loud, and still importunately. I put the jug on the banister and hastened to admit him myself. The harvest moon shone clear outside. It was not the attorney. My own sweet little mistress sprung on my neck, sobbing, "Oh, Ellen, is Papa alive? Please tell me." "Ah, yes," I cried. "Yes, my angel. Oh, he is. God be thanked that she is safe with us again." She wanted to run, breathless as she was, upstairs to Mr. Linton's room, but I compelled her to sit down on a chair and made her drink, and washed her pale face, chafing it into a faint color with my apron. When I said I must go first and tell of her arrival, imploring her to stay, she said she should be happy with young Heathcliff. She stared, but soon comprehending why I counselled her to utter the falsehood, she assured me that she would not complain. I couldn't abide to the present at their meeting. I stood outside the chamber door 1/4 of an hour, and hardly ventured near the bed. All was composed, however. Catherine's despair was as silent as her father's joy. She supported him calmly in appearance, and he fixed on her features with raised eyes that seemed dilated with ecstasy. "He died blissfully, Mr. Lockwood. He died so." Kissing her cheek, he murmured, "I'm going to her, and you, darling child, shall come to us," and never spoke or stirred again, but continued that rapt, radiant gaze till his pulse imperceptibly stopped and his soul departed. None could have noticed the exact minute of his death. It was so entirely without struggle. Whether Catherine had spent her tears, or whether the grief were too weighty to let them flow, she sat there dry-eyed until the sun rose. She sat till noon, and would have still remained brooding over that deathbed, but I insisted on her coming away and taking some repose. It was well that I succeeded in removing her, for at the dinner time appeared the lawyer, having called at Wuthering Heights to get his instructions on how to behave. He had sold himself to Mr. Heathcliff, and that was the cause of his delay in obeying my master's summons. Fortunately, no thought of worldly affairs crossed the latter's mind to disturb him after his daughter's arrival. Mr. Green took upon himself to order everything and everybody out of the place. He gave all the servants but me notice to quit. He would have carried his delegated authority to the point of insisting that Edgar Linton should not be buried beside his wife, but in the chapel with his family. There was the will, however, to hinder that, and my loud protestations against any infringement on its directions. The funeral was hurried over. Catherine, Mrs. Linton Heathcliff now, was suffered to stay at the Grange till her father's corpse had quitted it. She told me that in her anguish that was the last spurment to Linton to incur the risk of liberating her. She heard the men I sent, disputing them at the door, and gathered the sense of Heathcliff's answer. It drove her desperate. Linton, who had been conveyed up to the little parlor soon after I left, was terrified into fetching the key before his father reascended. He had the cunning to unlock and relock the door without shutting it, and when he should have gone to bed, he begged to sleep with Hareton, and in his petition was granted for once. Catherine stole out before break of day. She dare not try the doors, lest the dogs should raise an alarm. She visited the empty chambers and examined their windows, and luckily, lighting on her mother's, she got easily out of its lattice and onto the ground by the means of the fir tree close by. Her accomplice suffered for his share in the escape, notwithstanding his timid contrivances. Chapter 29. The evening after the funeral, my young lady and I were seated in the library, now musing mournfully, one of us despairingly, on our loss, now venturing conjectures to its gloomy future. We had just agreed to the best destiny that should await Catherine. At this time she was given permission to continue her residence at the Grange, at least during Linton's life, he being allowed to join her there, and I to remain as the housekeeper. That seemed rather too favorable an arrangement to be hoped for, and yet I did hope, and began to cheer up under the prospect of retaining my home and my employment, and above all, my beloved young mistress, when a servant, one of the discarded ones, not yet departed, rushed hastily in and said, "That devil Heathcliff he's coming through the court." Oh, he should have fastened the door in his face. If it had not been mad enough to order that proceeding, we had not the time. He made no ceremony of knocking or announcing his name. He was master, and he availed himself of his master's privilege to walk straight in without saying a word. The sound of our informant's voice directed him to the library. He entered and motioned for the man to step out, and then shut the door. It was the same room into which he had been ushered as a guest 18 years before. The same moon shone through the window, and the same autumn landscape lay outside. We had not yet lighted a candle, but all the apartment was visible, even to the portraits on the wall, the splendid head of Mrs. Linton, and the graceful one of her husband. Heathcliff advanced to the hearth. Time had little altered his person either. There was the same man, his dark face rather sallower and more composed, his frame a stone or two heavier, perhaps, with no other difference. Catherine had risen with an impulse to dash out when she saw him. "Stop," he said, arresting her by the arm. "No more runnings away. Where would you go? I've come to fetch you home, and I hope you'll be a dutiful daughter and not encourage my son to further disobedience. I was embarrassed how to punish him, but then I discovered his part in the business. He's such a cobweb, a pinch should annihilate him, but you'll see by his look that he has received his due. I brought him down one evening, the day before yesterday, and just to set him in a chair, and never touched him afterwards. I sent Hareton out, and we had the room to ourselves. In 2 hours I called Joseph to carry him up again, and since then my presence is as potent on his nerves as it was a ghost, and I fancy that he seems to see me often, though I am not near. Hareton says he wakes and shrieks in night by the hour together, and calls you to protect him from me, and whether you like your precious mate or not, you must come. He is your concern now. I yield all my interest in him to you." "Why not let Catherine continue here?" I pleaded, "and to send Master Linton to her? Oh, as you hate them both, you might not miss them at all. They can only be a daily plague to your unnatural heart." "I'm seeking a tenant for the Grange," he answered, "and I want my children about me, to be sure. Besides, that lass owes me her services for her bread. I'm not going to nurture her in luxury and idleness after Linton is gone. Make haste and get ready now, and don't oblige me to compel you." I shall," said Catherine. Linton is all that I have to love in the world, and though you have done what you could to make him hateful to me, and me to him, you cannot make us hate each other. And I defy you to hurt him when I am by, and I defy you to frighten me. You are a boastful champion, replied Heathcliff, but I don't like you well enough to hurt him. You shall get the full benefit of the torment as long as it lasts. It is not I who will make him fearful to you. It is his own sweet spirit. He's as bitter as gall at your desertion and its consequences. Don't expect thanks for this noble devotion. I heard him draw a pleasant picture to Zillah of what he would do if he were as strong as I. Oh, the inclination is there, and his very weakness will sharpen his wits to find a substitute for strength. I know he has a bad nature, said Catherine. He is your son, after all. But I'm glad I'll have a better to forgive it, and I know he loves me, and for that reason alone I, too, love him. Mr. Heathcliff, you have nobody to love you, and however miserable you make us, you shall still have the revenge of thinking that your cruelty arises from your greater misery. You are miserable, are you not? Lonely like the devil and envious like him? Nobody loves you. Nobody will cry for you when you die. I wouldn't. Oh, I would not at all. Catherine spoke with a kind of dreary triumph. She seemed to have made up her mind to enter into the spirit of her future family and draw pleasure from the griefs of her enemies. You shall be sorry to yourself presently, she said. Then he turned to her and said, Well now, if you stand there another minute, then you will be gone. Go, get your things. Scornfully she withdrew. In her absence I began to beg for Zillah's place at the Heights, offering to resign mine to her, but he would suffer it on no account. He bid me to be silent, and then for a long time allowed himself a glance around the room and a look at the pictures. Having studied Mrs. Linton, he said, I shall have that one home. Not because I need it, but... He turned abruptly to the fire and continued with what, for a lack of better word, I must call a smile. I'll tell you what I did yesterday. I got the sexton, who was digging Linton's grave, to remove the earth off of her coffin lid, and I opened it. I thought once I would have stayed there when I saw her face again, as it is hers, yet he had hard work to stir me, but he said it would change if the air blew on it, and I so struck one side of the coffin loose and covered it up. Not Linton's side, oh, damn him! I wish he'd been soldered in lead, but I bribed the sexton to pull it away. When I am laid there, and slide myself in there as well, I'll have made it so, and then by the time Linton gets to us, he'll not know which is which. You are very wicked, Mr. Heathcliff, I exclaimed. Were you not ashamed to disturb the dead? I disturbed nobody, Nelly, he replied, and I gave some ease to myself. I shall be a great deal more comfortable now, and you'll have a better chance of keeping me underground when I get there. Disturbed her? No. She has disturbed me, night and day, through 18 years, incessantly, remorselessly, till yesternight. And yesternight I was tranquil. I dreamt I was sleeping the last sleep by that sleeper, with my heart stopped and my cheek frozen against hers. And if she had been dissolved into the earth, or worse, what would ye have dreamt then? I said. Of dissolving with her and being more happy still, he answered. Do you suppose I dread any change of that sort? I expected such a transformation on raising that lid, but I am better pleased that it should not commence till I share it. Besides, unless I had received a distinct impression of her passionless features, that strange feeling would hardly have been removed. It began oddly. You know, I was wild after she died, and eternally, from dawn to dawn, praying her to return to me, her spirit. I have a strong faith in ghosts. I have a conviction that they can and do exist among us. The day she was buried, there came a snowfall, and in the evening I went to the churchyard. It blew bleak as winter, all around was solitary. I didn't fear that her fool of a husband would wander up to the den so late, and no one else had business to bring them there. Being alone and conscious 2 yards of loose earth was the sole barrier between us. I said to myself, "Oh, I will have her in my arms again, if she be cold. I'll think it is this north wind that chills me, and if she be motionless, it is sleep only." I did get a spade from the tool house and began to delve with all my might. It scraped the coffin, and then I fell to work with my hands. The wood commenced cracking about the screws, and I was on the point of attaining my object, when it seemed that I heard a sigh from someone above, close at the edge of the grave, and bending down. "If I can only get this off," I muttered to myself. "I wish they may shovel in the earth over us." And I retched more desperately still. There was another sigh, close at my ear. I appeared to feel the warm breath of it displacing the sleet-laden wind. I knew no living thing in flesh and blood was by, but as certainly as you perceive the approach to some substantial body in the dark, though it cannot be discerned, so certainly I felt that Cathy was there, not under me, but on the earth. A sudden sense of relief flowed from my heart. Through every limb, I relinquished my labor of agony and turned consoled at once, unspeakingly consoled. Her presence was with me. It remained while I refilled the grave and led me home. Oh, you may laugh if you will, but I was sure I should have seen her there. I was sure she was with me. I could not help but talk to her. Having reached the heights, I rushed eagerly into the door. It was fastened, and I remember that the accursed Earnshaw and my wife opposed my entrance. I remember stopping to kick the breath out of him, and then hurrying upstairs to my room and hers. I looked round impatiently, and felt her by me. I could almost see her, and yet I could not. Oh, I ought to have sweat blood then, from the anguish of my yearning, from the fervor of my supplications, to have but one glimpse. I had not one. She showed herself, as she often was in life, a devil to me. And since then, sometimes more and sometimes less, I've been the sport of that intolerable torture, infernal, keeping my nerves at such a stretch that, if they had not resembled catgut, they would. Oh, long ago they have relaxed to feebleness of lintons. When I sat in that house with Hareton, it seemed that on was going out. I should meet her. When I walked on the moors, I should meet her coming in. When I went from home, I hastened to return. She must be somewhere at the heights, I was certain. And when I slept in her chamber, I was beaten out of that. I couldn't lie there. For a moment I closed my eyes, and she was either outside the window, or sliding back the panels, or entering the room, or even rustling her darling head on the same pillow as she did when a child she was. And I must open my lids to see, and so I opened and closed them 100 times a night, to always be disappointed. It racked me. I've often groaned aloud, till that old rascal Joseph no doubt believed that my consciousness was playing the fiend inside of me. Now, since I've seen her, I am pacified, a little. It was a strange way of killing, not by inches, but by fractions of hairbreadths, to beguile me with the spectre of hope. Oh, through 18 years. Mr. Heathcliff paused and wiped his forehead. His hair clung to it, wet with perspiration. His eyes were fixed on the red embers of the fire, the brows not contracted but raised next to the temples, diminishing the grim aspect of his countenance, but imparting a peculiar look of trouble and a painful appearance of mental tension towards one absorbing subject. He only half addressed me, and I maintained silence. I didn't like to hear him talk. After a short period, he resumed his meditation on that picture, and then took it down and leant it against the sofa to contemplate it at a better advantage. And while so occupied, Catherine entered, announcing that she was ready when her pony was saddled. "Send that over tomorrow," said Heathcliff to me, and then turning to her, he added, "You may do without your pony. It is a fine evening, after all, and you'll need no ponies at Wuthering Heights. For what journeys you take, your own feet will serve you. Come along." "Oh, goodbye, Ellen," whispered my dear little mistress, and she kissed me. Her lips felt like ice. "Oh, please come and see me, Ellen. Please don't forget me." "Take care you do no such thing. You wait for me." And then, upon hearing this, Mr. Heathcliff turned and said, "Take care you do no such thing, Mrs. Dean," came her new father. "When I wish to speak to you, I'll come here. I want none of your prying at my house." He signed her to precede him, and casting back a look that cut my heart, she obeyed. I watched them from the window walk down the garden. Heathcliff fixed Catherine's arm under his, though she disputed the act at first, evidently, and with a rapid stride he hurried her into the alley, whose trees concealed them. Chapter 30. I have paid a visit to the Heights, but I have not seen her since I left. Joseph held the door in his hand, and when I called to ask after her, he wouldn't let me pass. He said that Mrs. Linton was a thrang, and that the master was not in. Zillah has told me something by the way that they go on. Otherwise, I should hardly know who was dead and who was living. She thinks Catherine naughty, and does not like her. I can guess by her talk. My lady asked some aid of hers when she first came, but Mr. Heathcliff told her to follow her own business, and let his daughter-in-law look after herself, and Zillah willingly acquiesced to this, as she was a narrow-minded, selfish woman herself. Catherine evinced a child's annoyance at this neglect, repaid it with contempt, and thus enlisted my informant among her enemies as securely as if she had done her some great wrong. I had a long talk with Zillah about 6 weeks ago, before you came, Mr. Lockwood, one day when we were foregathered on the moor, and this is what she told me. "The first thing Miss Linton did," she said, "on her arrival at the Heights, was to run upstairs without even wishing a good night to me and Joseph. Oh, she shut herself into Linton's room and remained there till morning. Ugh. Then, when the master and Earnshaw were at breakfast, she entered the house and asked in all the quiver if the doctor might be sent for, that her cousin was very ill. And then Mr. Heathcliff said, 'We know that, but his life is not worth a farthing, and I won't spend a farthing on him.' And then she said, 'But I cannot allow him. Please, please, tell me how to do. And if nobody will help me, he will die for sure.' 'Walk out of the room,' cried the master in response, 'and let me never hear a word more about him. None here care what becomes of him. If you do, act the nurse. If you do not, lock him up and leave him.' Then she began to bother me, and I said I had enough plague with the tiresome thing, and we each had our tasks, and hers was to wait on Linton. Oh, Mr. Heathcliff bid me to leave that labor to her specifically. Oh, how they managed together, I cannot tell you. I fancy he fretted a great deal and moaned hissling all night and day, and she had precious little rest. Oh, one could guess by her white face and heavy eyes that she sometimes came into the kitchen all wildered like, and looked as if she would fain to beg assistance, But I was going to disobey the master. I was never going to disobey him. Mrs. Dean, I will never ever help that child. I thought that it might have been wrong that Kenneth should not be sent for. Oh, but it was no concern of mine, either to advise or to complain, and I always refused to meddle. Once or twice, after we had gone to bed, I have happened to open my door again and then see her sitting crying on the stairs, and I've shut myself in quick for fear of being moved to interfere with her. I did pity her then, I'm sure. Still, I don't want to lose my place, you know. At last, one night, when she came boldly into my chamber and frightened me out of my wits, she said to me, "Tell Mr. Heathcliff that his son is dying. I am sure that he is this time. Please get up instantly and tell him." When she uttered this speech, she vanished again. I lay a quarter of an hour listening and trembling. Nothing stirred. The house was quiet. And then I said to myself that she was mistaken and that he obviously had gotten over it and I shouldn't disturb them. And so I began to doze, but my sleep was marred a second time by a sharp ringing of the bell, the only bell that we have, put up on purpose for Linton, and the master called me to see what the whole matter was and informed him and them that they wouldn't be having the noise repeated. Well, I delivered Catherine's message, and he cursed to himself and a few minutes came out with a lighted candle and proceeded to their room. I followed Mrs. Heathcliff, who was seated by the bedside with her hands folded on her knees. Her father-in-law went up, held the light to Linton's face, and looked at him and touched him, and afterwards he turned to her. "Now, Catherine," he said, "how do you feel?" Oh, she was dumb in response. She said nothing. "How do you feel, Catherine?" he repeated again. He is safe, and I am free," she answered. "I should feel well, but," she continued with a bitterness that she couldn't conceal, "you have left me so long to struggle against death alone that I feel and see only death. I feel like death." And she looked like it too, I'll tell you. I gave her a little wine, and Hareton and Joseph, who had been wakened by the ringing and the sound of their feet, and heard of our talk outside of the room, they then entered, and Joseph was fain, I believe, out of the lad's removal, and Hareton seemed a thought bothered, though he was more taken up with staring at Catherine than thinking of Linton. But the master bid him to get off the bed again. We didn't want his help, and he afterwards made Joseph remove the body to his chamber and told me to return to mine. And, Mrs. Heathcliff, she ended up remaining by herself. And then in the morning he sent me to tell her that she must come down to breakfast. And she had undressed and appeared to be going to sleep, and said that she was ill, and that which I should hardly wonder at. And then I informed Mr. Heathcliff, and to that he replied very intensely. "Well, let her be there till after the funeral, and then go up now, and then get her what is needful, and as soon as she seems better, tell me." Well, Kathy stayed upstairs a fortnight, according to what I had been told by Joseph, and that's what I'll tell you, Mrs. Dean. It was a sight to see. Zillah told me that she visited Kathy at least twice a day and would have been rather more friendly, but her attempts at increasing kindness were profound and promptly repelled. Heathcliff went up at once to show her Linton's will. He had bequeathed the whole of his and what had been her movable property to his father. The poor creature was threatened or coaxed into that act during her week's absence, when her uncle died. The lands being a minor, he could not meddle with. However, Mr. Heathcliff had claimed and kept them in his wife's right, and also, I suppose legally at any rate, Catherine, destitute of cash and friends, cannot disturb his possession. And then Zillah repeated, Nobody ever approached her door, except that once. But and nobody asked anything about her, and the first occasion of her coming down into the house was on a Sunday afternoon. Oh, she had cried out when I carried up her dinner, and that she couldn't bear any longer being in the cold, and I told her that the master was going to Thrushcross Grange, and Earnshaw and I needn't hinder her from descending. So, as soon as she heard Heathcliff's horse trot off, she made her appearance, donned in black, and her yellow curls combed back behind her ears, as plain as a Quaker, I tell you, and she couldn't comb them out if she tried. So, and then I responded, "Well, Joseph and I generally go to chapel on Sundays, and they call to the Methodist and the Baptist place, and I can't say which it is at Gimmerton, but is that where she went?" No. Joseph had gone, she continued, but I thought proper to bid at home. Young folks are always the better for an elder's overlooking, and Hareton, with all his bashfulness, isn't a model of nice behavior. I let him know that his cousin would be very likely to sit with us, and that she had always been used to see the Sabbath respected, so he had as good leave for his guns and his bits of outdoor work alone while she stayed. He colored up at the news and cast his eyes over his hands and his clothes. The train oil and gunpowder were shoved out of sight in a minute. Oh, I saw that he meant to give her his company, and I guess by his way he wanted to be as presentable as possible. So I, laughing, as I durst not laugh when the master is by, I offered to help him, if he would, and joked at his confusion, and he grew sullen and began to swear. Now, Mrs. Dean, she went on, seeing me not pleased by her manner, you happen to think that your young lady too fine for Mr. Hareton, and happen that you're right, but I own I should love well to bring her pride a peg lower, and you know what will all her learning and her daintiness do for her now? She's as poor as you or I, probably poorer, and I'll be bound you're saving, and I'm doing my little all that road. Hareton allowed Zillah to give him her aid, and she flattened him into a good humor. So, when Catherine came, half forgetting her former insults, he tried to make himself agreeable by the housekeeper's account. "Aye, the missus walking in," she said, "as chill as an icicle and as high as a princess. Oh, I got up and offered her my seat in the armchair. No, she turned up her nose at my civility. Earnshaw rose too and bid her come to the settle and sit close by the fire. Oh, he was sure that she was starved. I've been starved a month or more, and she couldn't even answer on that, and she seemed as scornful as possible. And then she got a chair for herself and placed it a distance from both of us, having sat till she was warm, and began to look around and discovered a number of books in the dresser. She was instantly upon her feet again, stretching to reach them, but they were too high up. Her cousin, after watching her endeavors a while, at last summoned the courage to help her, and she held her frock, and he filled it with the first thing that came to hand. That was a great advance for the lad. Oh, she didn't thank him. Still, he felt gratified that she had accepted his assistance, and ventured to stand behind as she examined them, and even to stoop and point out what struck his fancy in certain old pictures, which they contained, nor was he daunted by the saucy style in which she jerked the pages from his finger. He contented himself with going a bit farther back and looking at her instead of the book. So she continued reading, or seeking for something to read. His attention became by degrees quite centered in the study of her thick, silky curls. Her face he couldn't quite see, and she couldn't see him at all, and perhaps not quite awake to what he did, but attracted like a child to a candle. At last he did proceed from staring to touching. Oh, he put his hand and stroked one curl, as gently as if it were a bird. Oh, he might have struck a knife into her neck. She started round in such a taking. "Get away, this moment! How dare you touch me? Oh, why are you stopping there?" she cried, in that tone of disgust. "I can't endure you. I'll go upstairs again if you come near me." Oh, Mr. Hareton recoiled at that, looking as foolish as he could do. Oh, he sat down in the settle very quiet, and she continued turning over her volumes for another half hour. Finally, Earnshaw crossed over and whispered to me, "Will you ask her to read to us, Zillah? I'm stalled of doing naught, and I don't like, well, I could like to hear her. Do not say I wanted it, but, go asking of yourself." "Well, Mr. Hareton wishes that you would read to us, ma'am," I said immediately. "He'd take it very kind, and he'd be much obliged." She frowned at this and looked up, answering, "Well, Mr. Hareton, and the whole set of you will be good enough to understand that I reject any pretense at any kindness that you have the hypocrisy to offer. I despise you, and will have nothing to say to any of you. When I would have given my life for one kind word, even to see one of your faces, you all kept off. But I won't complain to you. I am driven down here by the cold, not either to amuse you or enjoy your society." "What could I done?" began Earnshaw. "How was I to blame?" "Oh, you are an exception," answered Mrs. Heathcliff. "I've never missed such a concern as you." "But I offered more than once, and I even asked," he said, kindling up at her pertness. "I asked Mr. Heathcliff to let me wake for you." "Oh, be silent! I'll go outdoors or anywhere rather than have your disagreeable voice in my ear," said my lady. Hareton muttered something, and that she might go to hell for him, and, unslinging his gun, restrained himself from his Sunday occupations no longer. Oh, he talked now, freely enough, and she presently saw fit to retreat to her solitude, but the frost had set in, and in spite of her pride she forced to condescend to our company more and more. However, I took care that there should be no further scorning at my good nature. Oh, ever since I've been as stiff as herself, and she has no lover or liker among us, and she does not deserve one, for let them say at least a word to her, and she'll curl back without respect of anybody. Oh, she'll snap at the master himself, and as good as dares him to thrash her. And the more hurt she gets, the more venomous she grows. You should see her." At first, on hearing this account from Zillah, I determined to leave my situation, and take a cottage and get Catherine to come and live with me. But Mr. Heathcliff would soon permit that, as he would set up Hareton in an independent house, and I could see no remedy at this present, unless she could marry again. And that scheme it does not come within my providence to arrange. Well, I'm going to take a brief break, and I will be right back, because we are getting very close to finishing this, and I think I want to try to finish it tonight. But I do want to get some water, so I will be right back. All right, so I had to take a small break, so I apologize, guys. I know everybody's been very into the story, but I needed a little bit of water. So, anyway, now we're going back to Mr. Lockwood's perspective, it seems. Thus ended Mrs. Dean's story. Notwithstanding the doctor's prophecy, I am rapidly recovering strength, and though it may only be the second week in January, I propose getting out on horseback in a day or two, and riding over to Wuthering Heights to inform my landlord that I shall spend the next 6 months in London. And if he may like, he can look out for another tenant to take the place after October. I would not pass another winter here for much. Chapter 31. Yesterday was bright, calm, and frosty. I went to the Heights as I proposed. My housekeeper entreated me to bear a little note from her to her young lady, and I did not refuse, for the worthy woman was not conscious of anything odd in her request. The front door stood open, but the jealous gate was fastened, as it was from my last visit. I knocked and invoked Earnshaw from among the garden beds. He unchained it, and I entered. The fellow is as handsome a rustic as need be seen. I took particular notice of him this time, but then he does his best, apparently, to make the least of his advantages. I asked if Mr. Heathcliff were at home. He answered no, but then he would be in at dinner time. It was 11 o'clock, and I announced my intention of going off and waiting for him, at which he immediately flung down his tools and accompanied me, in the office of a watchdog, not as a substitute for the host. We entered together, and Catherine was there, making herself useful and preparing some vegetables for the approaching meal. She looked more sulky and less spirited than when I had first seen her. She hardly raised her eyes to notice me, and continued her employment with the same disregard to the common forms of politeness, as before, never returning my bow, and no good morning by the slightest acknowledgment. Ah, she does not seem so amiable, I thought, as Mrs. Dean would persuade me to believe. She is a beauty, it is true, but not an angel. Earnshaw surely bid her to remove her things to the kitchen. Remove them yourself, she said, pushing them from her as soon as she had done, and retiring to a stool by the window, where she began to carve figures of birds and beasts out of the turnip parings in her lap. I approached her, pretending to desire a view of the garden, and as I fancied adroitly, I dropped Mrs. Dean's note onto her knee, unnoticed by Hareton. But she asked aloud, "What is that?" and chucked it off. "That is a letter from your old acquaintance, the housekeeper at the Grange," I answered, annoyed at her exposing my kind deed, and fearful lest it should be imagined a missive of my own. She would gladly have gathered it up at this information, but Hareton beat her. He seized it and put it in his waistcoat, saying that Mr. Heathcliff should look at it first. There, Catherine went silent and turned her face from us, and very stealthily drew out her pocket handkerchief and applied it to her eyes, and her cousin, after struggling a while to keep down his softer feelings, pulled out the letter and flung it on the floor beside her, as ungraciously as he could. Catherine caught and perused it eagerly. Then she put a few questions to me concerning the intimates, rational and irrational, of her former home, and gazing towards the hills, murmured in a soliloquy, "I should like to be riding Minnie down there. Oh, I should like to be climbing up there. Oh, I'm tired. I'm stalled. Oh, Hareton." And she leaned her pretty head against the sill, with half a yawn and half a sigh, and lapsed into an aspect of abstracted sadness, neither caring nor knowing whether she was remarked or not. "Mrs. Heathcliff," I said, after sitting some time mute, "are you not aware that I am an acquaintance of yours?" So intimate that I think it strange that you won't come to speak to me. My housekeeper never wearies of talking about and praising you, and she'll be greatly disappointed if I return with no answers of or from you except that you received her letter and said nothing." She appeared to wonder at this speech and asked, "Does Ellen like you?" "Yes, very well," I replied unhesitatingly. "Well, then you must tell her," she continued, "that I would answer her letter, but I have no materials for writing, not even a book from which I might tear a leaf." "No books!" I exclaimed. "How do you contrive to live here without them? If I may take the liberty to inquire, though, provided with a large library, I am frequently very dull at the Grange. Take my books away, and I should be desperate." I was always reading when I had them," said Catherine, "and Mr. Heathcliff never read books, so he took it into his head to destroy my books. Oh, I have not had a glimpse of one for weeks. Only once I searched through Joseph's store of theology, to his great irritation, and once Hareton and I came upon a secret stock in your room, some Latin and Greek, and some tales and poetry, all old friends. I brought the last here, and you gathered them as a magpie gathers silver spoons for the mere love of stealing. They are no use to you, or else you concealed them in a bad spirit, as you cannot enjoy them. Nobody else shall. Perhaps your envy counseled Mr. Heathcliff to rob me of my treasures. But I've most of them written in my brain and printed in my heart, and you cannot deprive me of those." Earnshaw blushed a crimson when his cousin made this revelation of his private literary accumulations, and stammered an indignant denial of her accusations. "Mr. Hareton is desirous of increasing his amount of knowledge," I said, coming to his rescue. "He is not envious, but emulous of your attainments. Oh, he'll be a clever scholar in a few years." "And he wants me to sink into a dunce meantime," answered Catherine. "Yes, I hear him trying to spell and read to himself, and pretty blunders he makes. Oh, I wish you would repeat Chevy Chase as you did yesterday. It was extremely funny. I heard you, and I heard you turning over the dictionary to see out the hard words and then cursing because you couldn't read their explanations." The young man evidently thought it too bad that he should be laughed at for his ignorance, and then laughed at for trying to remove it. I had a similar notion in remembering Mrs. Dean's anecdote of his first attempt at enlightening the darkness in which he had been reared, and then I observed, "But, Mrs. Heathcliff, we have each such a commencement, and each stumbled and tottered on the threshold and had our teachers scorned. Instead of aiding us, we should stumble and totter yet." "Oh," she replied, "I don't wish to limit his acquirements. Still, he has no right to appropriate what is mine and make it ridiculous to me with his vile mistakes and mispronunciations. Oh, those books, both prose and verse, were consecrated to me by other associations, and I hate to have them debased and profaned in his mouth. Besides, of all, he has selected my favorite pieces that I love the most to repeat, as if out of deliberate malice." Hareton's chest heaved in silence a minute. He labored under a severe sense of mortification and wrath, which it was no easy task to suppress. I rose, and from a gentlemanly idea of relieving his embarrassment, took up my station in the doorway, surveying the external prospect as I stood. He followed my example and left the room, but presently reappeared, bearing half a dozen volumes in his hand, which he threw into Catherine's lap, exclaiming, "Take them! I never want to hear or read or think of them again." "Oh, I won't have them now," she answered. "I shall connect them with you, and then I will hate them the more." She opened one that had obviously been often turned over and read a portion in a drawling tone of a beginner, then laughed and threw it from her. And listen, she continued provokingly, commencing a verse of an old ballad in the same fashion. But his self-love would endure no further torment. I heard, and not altogether disapprovingly, a manual check to give her saucy tongue. The little wretch had done her utmost to hurt her cousin's sensitive, though uncultivated feelings, and a physical argument was the only mood that he had of balancing the account and repaying its effects on the inflictor. He afterwards gathered the books and hurled them on the fire. I read in his countenance what anguish it was to offer that sacrifice to spleen. I fancied that, as they were consummated, that he recalled the pleasure that they had already imparted, and the triumph and ever-increasing pleasure that he anticipated from them, and I fancied that I guessed the incitement to his secret studies also. He had been content with daily labor and rough animal enjoyments, till Catherine crossed his path. Shame at her scorn and hope of her approval were his first prompters to higher pursuits, and instead of guarding him from one and winning him the other, his endeavors to raise himself had produced just the contrary result. "Yes, that's all good, that such a brute as you can get from them," cried Catherine, sucking her damaged lip and watching the conflagration with indignant eyes. "You'd better hold your tongue now," he answered fiercely, and his agitation precluding further speech, he advanced hastily to the entrance, where I made my way for him to pass. But ere he had crossed the door-stones, Mr. Heathcliff, coming up the causeway, encountered him, and laying hold of his shoulder, asked, "What's to do now, my lad?" Not," he said, and broke away to enjoy his grief and anger in solitude. Heathcliff gazed after him and sighed. "It will be odd, and I thwart myself," he muttered, unconscious that I was behind him. "But when I look for his father in his face, I find her every day more. How the devil is he so like? I can hardly bear to see him." He bent his eyes to the ground and walked moodily in. There was a restless, anxious expression in his countenance that I had never remarked there before, and he looked sparer in person. His daughter-in-law, on perceiving him through the window, immediately escaped to the kitchen, so that I remained alone. "I'm glad to see you out of doors again, Mr. Lockwood," he said in a reply to my greeting. "From selfish motives, partly. I don't think that I could readily supply your loss in this desolation. I've wondered more than once what brought you here." "An idle whim, I fear, sir," was my answer. "Or else what an idle whim is going to spirit me away? I shall set out for London next week, and I must give you warning that I feel no disposition to retain Thrushcross Grange beyond the 12 months that I agreed to rent it. I believe I shall not live there any more." "Oh, indeed, you're tired of being banished from the world, are you?" he said. "But if you are coming to plead off paying for a place that you won't occupy, your journey is useless. I never relent in extracting my due from anyone." "I'm coming to plead of nothing about it," I exclaimed, considerably irritated. "Should you wish it, I'll settle with you now." And I drew my notebook from my pocket. No, he replied coolly. "You'll leave sufficient behind to cover your debts. If you fail to return, I'm not in such a hurry. Sit down and take your dinner with us. A guest that is safe from repeating his visit can generally be made welcome. Catherine, bring the things in. Where are you?" Catherine reappeared, bearing a tray of knives and forks. "You may get your dinner with Joseph," muttered Heathcliff aside, "and remain in the kitchen till he is gone." She obeyed his directions very punctually. Perhaps she had no temptation to transgress. Living among clowns and misanthropists, she probably cannot appreciate a better class of people when she meets them. With Mr. Heathcliff, grim and saturnine, on one hand, and Hareton absolutely dumb on the other, I made a somewhat cheerless meal, and bid adieu early. I would have departed by the back way to get a last glimpse of Catherine and annoy old Joseph, but Hareton received orders to lead up my horse, and my host himself escorted me to the door, so that I would not fulfill my wish. How dreary life gets in that house, I reflected while riding down the road. What a realization of something more romantic than a fairy tale it would have been for Mrs. Linton Heathcliff had she and I struck up an attachment, as her good nurse desired, and migrated together to a stirring atmosphere of the town. Chapter 32. 1802. This September I was invited to devastate the moors of a friend in the north, and on my journey to his abode I unexpectedly came within 15 miles of Gimmerton. The hostler at the roadside public house was holding a pail of water to refresh my horses, when a cart of very green oats, newly reaped, passed by, and he remarked, "Yon's from Gimmerton, na. There are lasses. Oh, they're wick all their folk worth er the harvest." Gimmerton, I repeated. My residence in that locality had already grown dim and dreamy. "Ah, I know. How far is it from this?" "Happen a 14 mile over the hills, and a rough road," he answered. A sudden impulse seized me to visit Thrushcross Grange. It was scarcely noon, and I conceived that I might as well pass the night under my own roof as an inn. Besides, I could spare a day easily to arrange matters with my landlord, and thus save myself the trouble of invading the neighborhood again. Having rested a while, I directed my servant to inquire the way to the village, and with great fatigue to our beasts, we managed the distance in some 3 hours. I left him there and proceeded down the valley alone. The grey church looked greyer, and the lonely churchyard lonelier. I distinguished a moor sheep cropping the short turf on the graves. It was sweet, warm weather, too warm for traveling, but the heat did not hinder me from enjoying the delightful scenery above and below, and had I seen it nearer August, I'm sure it would have tempted me to waste a month among the solitudes. In winter, nothing more dreary, in summer, nothing more divine than those glens shut in by the hills, and those bluff and bold swells of health. I reached the Grange before sunset, and knocked for admittance, but the family had retreated to the back premises, and I judged by one thin blue wreath curling from the kitchen chimney that they did not hear. I rode into the court. Under the porch a girl of 9 or 10 sat knitting, and an old woman reclined on the house steps, smoking a meditative pipe. "Is Mrs. Dean within?" I demanded of the dame. "Mistress Dean? Nay," she answered. "Shoo doesn't bid around here. Shoo's up at the Heights." "Are you the housekeeper, then?" I continued. "I'll keep the house," she replied. "Well, I'm Mr. Lockwood, the master. Are there any rooms to lodge me in, I wonder? I wish to stay here all night." "Te maister!" she cried in astonishment. "But whoever knew ye were coming? Oh, ye should ha' sent a word. There's neither dry nor menstrual about that place. Now there isn't it?" She threw down her pipe and bustled in. The girl followed, and I entered too, soon perceiving that her report was true, and moreover that I had almost upset her wits by an unwelcome apparition. I bid her to be composed. I would go out for a walk, and in the meantime she must try to prepare a corner of the sitting-room for me to sup in, and in a bedroom to sleep in as well. No sweeping, no dusting, only good fires and dry sheets were necessary. She seemed willing to do her best, though she thrust the hearth-brush into the grates in a mistake for the poker, and malappropriated several other articles of her craft. But I retired, confiding in her energy for a resting place against my return. Wuthering Heights was the goal of my proposed excursion, after an afterthought brought me back when I had quitted the court. "All is well at the Heights?" I inquired of the woman. "And for now, you know," she answered, scurrying away with a pan of hot cinders. I would have asked why Mrs. Dean had deserted the Grange, but it was impossible to delay her at such a crisis, so I turned away and made my exit, rambling leisurely along with the glow of a sinking sun behind the mild glory of a rising moon in the front, one fading and the other brightening, as I quitted the park and climbed the stony by-road branching off to Mr. Heathcliff's dwelling. Before I arrived in sight of it, all that remained of the day was a beamless amber light along the west, but I could see that every pebble on the path and every blade of grass by that splendid moon. I had neither to climb the gate nor to lock. It yielded to my hand. That was surely an improvement, I thought to myself, and I noticed another by the aid of my nostrils, a fragrance of stalks and wallflowers that wafted through the air from amongst the homely fruit trees. Both doors and lattices were open, and yet, as usually the case in a coal district, a fine red fire illumined the chimney, and the comfort from which the eye derives from it renders the extra heat endurable. But the house of Wuthering Heights is so large that the inmates have plenty of space for withdrawing out of the influence, and accordingly, what inmates there were had stationed themselves not far from one of the windows. I could both see them and hear them talk before I entered, and I looked and listened in consequence, being moved thereto by a mingled sense of curiosity and envy that grew as I lingered. "Contrary," said a voice as sweet as a silver bell, "that for the third time, you dunce, I am not going to tell you again. Recollect, or I will pull your hair out." "Contrary, then," answered another in a deep but softened tone. "And now kiss me for minding so well." "No, read it over first correctly, without a single mistake." The male speaker began to read. He was a young man, respectably dressed and seated at a table, having a book before him. His handsome features glowed with a pleasure, and his eyes kept impatiently wandering from the page to a small white hand over his shoulder, which recalled him by a smart slap on the cheek whenever its owner detected such signs of inattention. Its owner stood behind, her light shining ringlets blending at intervals with his brown locks, as she bent to superintend his studies, and her face, it was lucky he could not see her face, or he would never have been so steady. I could, and I bit my lip in spite at having thrown away the chance I might have had of doing something besides staring at its smiting beauty. The task was done, not free from further blunders, but the pupil claimed a reward, and received at least 5 kisses, which, however, he generously returned. Then they came to the door, and from their conversation I judged that they were about to issue out and have a walk on the moors. I supposed I should condemn Hareton Earnshaw's heart, if not by his mouth, to the lowest pit in the infernal regions, if I showed my unfortunate person in his neighborhood then, and feeling very mean and malignant, I skulked around to seek refuge in the kitchen. There was unobstructed admittance on that side also, and at the door sat my old friend, Nellie Dean, sewing and singing a song, which was often interrupted from within by harsh words of scorn and intolerance, uttered in a far from musical accent. "Had ye rather be'as and the huff of the having the swearing I may have my lungs, for your morning nodding. Oh, nor hearken ye has ever," said the tenant of the kitchen, in answer to an unheard speech of Nellie's. "It's a blaming shame ought ye cannot open a blessed book, but ye not set them up in the glories to Satan, and all the flaysome wickedness at whichever ye born into the world. You're straight now into shoes another. And that poor lad be lost between ye. Poor lad," he added with a groan. "He's witched smarting on it. O Lord, judge 'em, for there's northern law nor justice among your wallers. No, or we shall be sitting in flaming faggots, I suppose, retorted the singer. But wish it, old man, and read your Bible like a Christian, and never mind me. This is the Fairy Annie's wedding, and a bonny tune, and it does go to dance. Mrs. Dean was about to recommence when I advanced, and recognizing me directly, she jumped to her feet, crying, "Why, bless ye, Mr. Lockwood! How could ye think of returning on this way? All's shut up at Thrushcross Grange. Oh, ye should have given us notice." "I have arranged to be accommodated there for as long as I shall stay," I answered. "I depart again in the morning. And how are you transplanted here, Mrs. Dean? Please tell me." "Well, Zillah left, and Mr. Heathcliff wished me to come soon after ye went to London, and stay till ye returned. But step in and pray. Oh, have ye walked from Gimmerton this evening?" "From the Grange," I replied, "and while they make me lodging room there, I want to finish my business with your master, because I don't think of having another opportunity in a hurry." "What business, sir?" said Nellie, conducting me into the house. "He's gone out at present, and won't return soon." "About the rent," I answered. "Oh, then it is with Mrs. Heathcliff you must settle," she observed, "or rather with me. She has not learned to manage her affairs yet, and I act for her. There's nobody else." I looked surprised. "Ah, you have not heard of Heathcliff's death, I see," she continued. "Heathcliff is dead?" I exclaimed, astonished. "How long ago?" "Oh, 3 months since. But sit down and let me take your hat, and I'll tell you all about it. Stop, you have had nothing to eat, have you?" "I want nothing. I've ordered supper at home. You sit down too. I never dreamt of his dying. Let me hear how it came to pass. You say that you don't expect them back for some time, the young people." "No, I have to scold them every evening for their late-night rambles, but they don't care for me. At least, have a drink of our old ale. It will do you good. You seem weary." She hastened to fetch it before I could refuse, and I heard Joseph asking whether it wasn't some crying scandal that she should have the fellies of her all the time, and then to get them jocks out of the master's cellar. Oh, he fair shame to be bid still and see it. She did not stay to retaliate, but re-entered in a minute, bearing a reaming silver pint, whose contents I lauded with becoming earnestness, and afterwards she furnished me with a sequel of Heathcliff's history. He had a queer end, as she expressed it. So now we're going back into Mrs. Dean's perspective of what happened. "I was summoned to Wuthering Heights within a fortnight of your leaving us," she said. "I obeyed joyfully for Catherine's sake. My first interview with her grieved and shocked me. She had altered so much since our separation. Mr. Heathcliff did not explain his reasons for taking a new mind about my coming here. He only told me that he wanted me, and he was tired of seeing Catherine. I must make the little parlor my sitting room, and keep her with me. It was enough if he were obliged to see her once or twice a day. She seemed pleased at this arrangement, and by degrees I smuggled over a great number of books and other articles that had formed her amusement at the Grange, and flattered myself when we should get on in the tolerable comfort. The delusion did not last long. Catherine, contented at first in a brief space, grew irritable and restless. For one thing, she was forbidden to move out of the garden, and it fretted her sadly to be confined to its narrow bounds as spring drew on. For another, in following the house, I was forced to quit her frequently, and she complained of loneliness. She preferred quarreling with Joseph in the kitchen to sitting at peace in her solitude. I did not mind their skirmishes, but Hareton was often obliged to seek the kitchen also, when the master wanted to have the house to himself. And though in the beginning she neither left it at his approach or quietly joined in my occupations and shunned remarking or addressing him, and though he was always as sullen and silent as possible, after a while she had changed her behavior and became incapable of letting him alone, talking at him, commenting on his stupidity and idleness, expressing her wonder at how he could endure the life he lived, how he could sit a whole evening staring into the fire and dozing. "Oh, he's just like a dog, is he not, Ellen?" she once observed, "or a cart horse. He does not work, he eats his food and sleeps eternally. What a blank, dreary mind he must have." "Oh, do you dream, Hareton? And if you do, what is it about? Oh, but you can't speak to me." And then she looked at him, but he would never open his mouth nor look again. He's perhaps dreaming now," she continued. "He's twitched his shoulder as Juna twitches hers. Oh, ask him, Ellen." "Well, Mr. Hareton will be the master to send ye upstairs if you don't behave," I said. He had not only twitched his shoulder but clenched his fist as if tempted to use it. "Oh, I know why Hareton never speaks when I am in the kitchen," she exclaimed on another occasion. "He is afraid that I shall laugh at him, Ellen. What do you think? Oh, he's begun to teach himself to read once, and because I laughed he burned his books and dropped it. Oh, was he not a fool?" "Were you not so naughty?" I said. "Answer me that." "Perhaps I was," she went on, "but I did not expect him to be so silly. Oh, Hareton, if I gave you a book, would you take it now? I'll try." She placed one that she had been perusing on his hand, and he flung it off and muttered, as if she did not give over, he would break her neck. "Oh, well, I shall just put it here then," she said, "in the table drawer, and I'm going to bed." Then she whispered to me to watch whether he touched it, and departed. But he would not come near it, and so I informed her in the morning, to her great disappointment. I saw that she was sorry for his preserving sulkiness and indolence. Her conscience reproved her for frightening him off improving himself. She had done it effectually, but her ingenuity was at work to remedy the injury while I ironed, or pursued some other stationary employment. I could not well do in the parlor. She would bring some pleasant volume and read it aloud to me. When Hareton was there, she generally paused in an interesting part and left the book lying about. That she did repeatedly, but he was as obstinate as a mule, and instead of snatching at her bait in wet weather, he took to smoking with Joseph, and they sat like automatons, one on each side of the fire, the elder happily too deaf to understand her wicked nonsense, as he would have called it, the younger doing his best to seem to disregard it. On fine evenings the latter followed with his shooting expeditions, and Catherine yawned and sighed and teased me to talk to her, and ran off to the court or garden the moment I began, and as a last resource cried and said she was tired of living, her life was useless. Mr. Heathcliff, who grew more and more disinclined to society, had almost banished Earnshaw out of his apartment. Owing to an accident at the commencement of March, he became for some days a fixture in the kitchen. His gun burst while out on the hills by himself. A splinter cut his arm, and he lost a good deal of blood before he could reach home. The consequence was that, perforce, he was condemned to the fireside, to the tranquillity, till it made him up again. It suited Catherine to have him there, at any rate. It made her hate her room upstairs more than ever, and she would compel me to find out business below, that she might accompany me. On Easter Monday, Joseph went to Gimmerton Fair with some cattle, and in the afternoon I was busy getting up the linen in the kitchen. Earnshaw sat morose as usual at the chimney corner, and my little mistress was beguiling an idle hour with drawing pictures on the window panes, varying her amusement by smoothed outbursts of songs, and whispered ejaculations, and quick glances of annoyance and impatience in the direction of her cousin, who steadfastly smoked and looked into the grate. At a notice that I could do with her no longer, intercepting my light, she removed to the hearthstone. I bestowed little attention on her proceedings, but presently heard her begin. "Oh, I've found out, Hareton, and I want that, that I'm glad that I should like you to be my cousin, now that you had not grown so cross to me and so rough." Hareton returned no answer. "Hareton, Hareton, Hareton, do you hear?" she continued. "Get off with ye," he growled with uncompromising gruffness. "Let me take that pipe," she said, cautiously advancing her hand and abstracting it from his mouth. Before he could attempt to recover it, it was broken, and behind the fire, he swore at her and seized another. "Oh, stop!" she cried. "You must listen to me first, and I can't speak while those clouds are floating around my face." "Will you go to the devil," he exclaimed ferociously, "and let me be?" "No," she persisted, "I won't. I can't tell what you to do or what to make you talk to me, and you are determined not to understand. So when I call you stupid, I don't mean anything. I don't mean that I despise you. Come, you shall take notice of me, Hareton. You are my cousin, and you shall own me." "I shall have naught to do with you and your mucky pride and your damned mocking tricks," he answered. "I'll go to hell, body and soul, before I look sideways after you again. Side out! Get out! Get out of my way this minute!" Catherine frowned at that and retreated to the window seat, chewing her lip and endeavoring, by some humming of an eccentric tune, to conceal the growing descendancy of her sob. "Aye, you should be friends with your cousin, Mr. Hareton," I interrupted, "since she represents and repents some of her sauciness. It would do you a great deal of good. It would make you another man, to have her for a companion." "A companion?" he cried, "when she hates me and does not think me fit to wipe her shoon? Nay, if it made me a king, I'd not be scorned for seeking her good will any more." "It is not I who hate you, it is you who hate me," wept Kathy, no longer disguising her trouble. "You hate me as much as Mr. Heathcliff does, or more." "You're a damned liar," began Earnshaw. "Why have I made him angry? By taking your part, then, 100 times? And that, when you sneered at me and despised me, and go on plaguing me, and I'll step out in yonder and say that you worried me out of the kitchen." "I didn't know you took my part," she answered, drying her eyes, "and I was miserable and bitter at everybody. But now I thank you, and I beg you to forgive me. What can I do besides?" She returned to the hearth and frankly extended her hand. He blackened and scowled like a thundercloud, and kept his fists resolutely clenched and his gaze fixed on the ground. Catherine, by instinct, must have divined it was to obdurate perversity and not dislike that prompted his dogged conduct. For after remaining an instant undecided, she stooped and impressed on his cheek a gentle kiss. The little rogue thought I had not seen her, and though drawing back, she took her former station by the window, quite demurely. I shook my head reprovingly, and then she blushed and whispered, "Well, what should I have done, Ellen? He wouldn't shake hands, and he wouldn't look. I must show him some way that I am like him, that I want to be friends." Whether the kiss convinced Hareton, I cannot tell. He was very careful, for some minutes, that his face should not be seen, and when he did raise it, he was sadly puzzled where to turn his eyes. Catherine employed herself in wrapping a handsome book neatly in white paper, and having it tied with a bit of ribband, and addressed it to Mr. Hareton Earnshaw. She desired me to be her ambassadress and convey the present to its destined recipient. And tell him, if he'll take it, I'll come and teach him to read it right, she said, and if he refuses it, I'll go upstairs and never tease him again. I carried it and repeated the message, anxiously watched by my employer. Hareton would not open his fingers, so I laid it on his knee. He did not strike it off either. I returned to my work, and Catherine leaned her head and arms on the table till she heard the slight rustle of the covering being removed. Then she stole away and quietly seated herself beside her cousin. He trembled and his face glowed. All his rudeness and all his surly harshness had deserted him. He could not summon courage at first to utter a syllable in reply to her questioning look and her murmured petition. "Oh, say you forgive me, Hareton. Please say you do. You can make me so happy by speaking that little word." He muttered something inaudible. And you'll be my friend?" added Catherine, interrogatingly. "Nay, you'll be ashamed of me every day of your life," he answered, "and more you know me, and I cannot bide it." "So you won't be my friend?" she said, smiling as sweetly as honey and creeping up close. I overheard no more distinguishable talk, but on looking round again I perceived two such radiant countenances bent over the page of the accepted book that I did not doubt the treaty had been ratified. On both sides, and the enemies were thenceforth sworn allies. The work they studied was full of costly pictures, and those in their position had charm enough to keep them unmoved, till Joseph came in. He, poor man, was perfectly aghast at the spectacle of Catherine seated on the same bench with Hareton Earnshaw, leaning her hand on his shoulder, and confounded at his favourite's endurance of her proximity. It affected him too deeply to allow an observation on the subject that night. His emotion was only revealed by the immense sighs he drew as he solemnly spread his large Bible on the table, and laid it with dirty banknotes from his pocket-book, and the produce of the day's transactions. At length he summoned Hareton from his seat. "Take these to your master, dear lad," he said, "and bide there, as a gang up the Armon. The holy as the Northful men's for seamen for us. We mun manage that and search another." "Come, Catherine," I said, "we must side out too. I've done my ironing. Are you ready to go?" "But it is not 8 o'clock," she answered, rising unwillingly. "Hareton and I'll leave this book open by the chimney-piece, and I'll bring some more tomorrow." "Any books you leave, you're talking it in truths," said Joseph, "and it'll be much missed if you can find 'em again, so you munna pleasin' yourself." Kathy threatened that his library would pay for hers, and smiling as she passed Hareton, went singing upstairs, light of heart. I ventured to say that she had never been that happiest under that roof before, except perhaps during her earliest visits to Linton. The intimacy thus commenced grew rapidly, though it encountered temporary interruptions. Earnshaw was not to be civilized with a wish, and my lady was no philosopher, and no paragon of patience, but both their minds tending to the same point, one loving and one desiring to esteem. You see, Mr. Lockwood, it was easy enough to win Mrs. Heathcliff's heart, but now I am glad you did not try. The crown of all my wishes will be the union of these two. I shall envy no one on their wedding day more. There won't be a happier woman than myself in England. Chapter 33. On the morrow of that Monday, Earnshaw, still being unable to follow his ordinary employments, and therefore remaining about the house, I speedily found it would be more impracticable to retain my charge beside me, as heretofore. She got downstairs before me, and out into the garden, where she had seen her cousin performing some easy work, and when I went to bid them to come for breakfast, I saw that she had persuaded him to clear a large space of ground from currant and gooseberry bushes, and they were busy planning together an importation of plants from the Grange. I was terrified at the devastation that had been accomplished in a brief half hour. The black currant trees were the apple of Joseph's eye, and she had just fixed her choice of a flower bed in the midst of them. "There, that will be all that is shown to the master," I exclaimed, "the minute it is discovered, and what excuse would you have then for taking such liberties with the garden? Oh, we shall have a fine explosion on our head for it. If we won't, oh, Mr. Hareton, I wonder if you should have no more wit than to go and make that mess at her bidding." "Well, I had forgotten that they were Joseph's," answered Earnshaw, rather puzzled, "but I'll tell him that I did it." We always ate our meals with Mr. Heathcliff. I held the mistress's post in making tea and carving, so I was indispensable at the table. Catherine usually sat by me, but today she stole nearer to Hareton, and I presently saw that she would have no more discretion in her friendship than she had in her hostility. "Now, don't mind you talk with and notice us too much. It will definitely annoy Mr. Heathcliff, and I'm sure he'll be mad at us. And of course we are not going to really attract his attention." The minute after, she sidled to him, and was sticking primroses in his plate of porridge. He dared not speak to her. There he dared hardly to look. And yet she went on teasing till he was twice on the point of being provoked to laugh. And I frowned, and then she glanced towards the master, whose mind was occupied with other subjects than his company, as his countenance evinced, and she grew serious for an instant, scrutinizing him with deep gravity. Afterwards she turned and recommenced her nonsense. At last Hareton uttered a smothered laugh. Mr. Heathcliff started. His eye rapidly surveyed our faces. Catherine met it with her accustomed look of nervousness and yet defiance, which he abhorred. "It is well that you are out of my reach," he exclaimed. "What fiend possesses you to stare back at me continually with those infernal eyes? Down with them, and don't remind me of your existence again. I thought I had cured you of laughing." "It was me," muttered Hareton. "What did you say?" demanded the master. Hareton looked at his plate and did not repeat the confession. Mr. Heathcliff looked at him a bit and then silently resumed his breakfast and his interrupted musing. We had nearly finished, and the two young people prudently shifted wider asunder, so I anticipated no further disturbance during that sitting, when Joseph appeared at the door, revealing his quivering lip and furious eyes at the outrage committed on his precious herbs was detected. He must have seen Kathy and her cousin about the spot before he examined it, for while his jaws worked like those of a cow chewing its cud, and rendered his speech difficult to understand, he began, "Oh, man, have my wage. Oh, man, go. Oh, had it seemed that where you saving up all the 60 year. Oh, throt of my books in the garret and all my bits and stuff, and how to save the kitchen the thirstlin'. Oh, that could you do that? How could you do that? But na's a shoe in my garden for me. Oh, by the heart, maister, I cannot stand it. You mun bend the yoke in. Oh, you will. No one to do it until you man. So when you get to be the barthens, how'd you rather bite my arm and assault me with a hammer in the road?" Now, idiot," interrupted Heathcliff. "Cut it short. What is your grievance? I'll interfere in no quarrels between you and Nellie. She may thrust you into the coal-hole for anything I care." "It's not Nellie," answered Joseph. "Oh, shouldn't sift poor Nellie. Nasty 'twill not is shoe. Thank God she cannot tell a soul. Oh, but nobody so never handsome But what the body muck look at what ship you bueno no winking? The graceless queen with his hat. Oh, look what she a doing to the lad. Nay, fair burst my heart. He's forgotten all he done for him, and made him, and good him, all riven up now to the grandest currant trees in the garden. And here he lamented outright, unmanned by a sense of his bitter injuries, and Earnshaw's ingratitude in a dangerous condition. Is the fool drunk? Asked Mr. Heathcliff. Hareton, is it you he's finding fault with? Well, I've pulled up 2 or 3 bushes, replied the young man, but I'm going to set them again. And why have you pulled them up? Said the master. Catherine wisely put in her tongue. Well, we wanted to plant some flowers there, she cried. I'm the only person to blame, for I wished for him to do it. And who the devil gave you leave to touch a stick about the place? Demanded her father-in-law, much surprised. And who ordered you to obey her? He added, turning to Hareton. The latter was speechless. His cousin replied, You shouldn't grudge a few yards of earth for me to ornament when you have taken all my land. Your land? Oh, you insolent slut! You never had any, said Heathcliff. And my money, she continued, returning his angry glare and, in the meantime, biting a piece of crust, the remnant of her breakfast. Silence, he exclaimed. Get done and be gone. And Hareton's land and money? That is mine. And then she replied, Hareton and I are friends now, and I shall tell him all about you. The master seemed confounded in a moment, and grew pale and rose up, eyeing her all the while with an expression of mortal hate. If you strike me, Hareton will strike you, she said. So you may as well sit down. If Hareton does not turn you out of the room, I'll strike him to hell, thundered Heathcliff. Damnable witch! Dare you to pretend to rouse him against me? Off with her. Do you hear? Fling her into the kitchen. I'll kill her, Ellen Dean, if you do not come into my sight again. Hareton tried under his breath to persuade her to go. Drag her away, he cried savagely. Are you saying nothing? Are you going to stay and talk? And he reproached to execute his own command. He'll not obey you, you wicked man, not any more, said Catherine, and he'll soon detest you as much as I do. Wish it, muttered the young man reproachfully. I will not hear you speak to him so. Have done. But you won't let him strike me, she cried. Come then, he whispered earnestly. It was too late. Heathcliff caught hold of her. Now you go, he said to Earnshaw. Accursed witch, this time she has provoked me, when I could not bear it, and I'll make her repent it forever. He had his hand in her hair. Hareton attempted to release the locks, entreating him not to hurt her that once. His black eyes flashed, and he seemed ready to tear Catherine into pieces, and I was just as worked up to risk coming to the rescue, when all of a sudden his fingers relaxed, and he shifted his grasp from her head to her arm, and gazed intently into her face. Then he drew his hand over his eyes, and stood a moment to collect himself. And then he began to turn anew to Catherine, and said with assumed calmness, You must learn to avoid putting me in such a passion, or I shall really murder you sometime. Go now with Mrs. Dean, and keep with her. Confine your insolence to her ears. As to Hareton Earnshaw, if I see him listen to you, I'll send him seeking his bread where he can get it. Your love will make him an outcast and a beggar. Nellie, take her and leave me. All of you, leave me. I led my young lady out, and she was too glad of her escape to resist. The other followed, and Mr. Heathcliff had the room to himself till dinner. I had counseled Catherine to get hers upstairs, but as soon as he perceived her vacant seat, he sent me to call her. He spoke to none of us, ate very little, and went out directly afterwards, intimating that he should not return before the evening. The two new friends established themselves in the house during his absence, when I heard Hareton sternly check his cousin on her offering a revelation of her father-in-law's conduct to his father. He said that he wouldn't suffer a word to be uttered to him in his disparagement. If he were the devil, it didn't signify that he would stand by him, and he'd rather she would abuse himself, as she used to, than begin on Mr. Heathcliff. Catherine was waxing cross at this, but he found means to make her hold her tongue by asking how she would like him to speak ill of her father. And then she comprehended that Earnshaw took the master's reputation home to himself, and was attached by ties stronger than reason could break, chains formed by habit, which would be cruel to attempt to loosen. She showed a good heart thenceforth in avoiding both complaints and expressions of antipathy concerning Heathcliff, and confessed to me her sorrow that she had endeavored to raise a bad spirit between him and Hareton. Indeed, I don't believe that she ever breathed a syllable in the latter's hearing against her oppressor since. When this slight disagreement was over, they were thick again, and as busy as possible in their several occupations of pupil and teacher. I came in to sit with them after I had done my work, and I felt so soothed and comforted to watch them that I had not noticed how time had gone on. You know, they both appeared in a measure my children. I had long been proud of one, and now I was sure the other would be a source of equal satisfaction. His honest, warm, and intelligent nature shook off rapidly the clouds of ignorance and degradation in which it had been bred, and Catherine's sincere commendations acted as a spur to his industry. His brightening mind brightened his features, and added spirit and nobility to their aspect. I could hardly fancy it the same individual that I had beheld on the day that I discovered my little lady at Wuthering Heights after her expedition to the crags. While I admired that they labored, dusk grew on, and with it returned the master. He came upon us quite unexpectedly, entering by the front way, and had a full view of the whole tree ere we could raise our heads to glance at him. Well, I reflected that there was never a pleasanter or more harmless sight, and it will be a burning shame to scold them. The red firelight glowed on their two bonny heads and revealed their faces, animated with eager interest of children, for though he was 23 and she 18, each had so much of novelty to feel and learn that neither experienced nor evinced the sentiments of sober, disenchanted maturity. They lifted their eyes together to encounter Mr. Heathcliff. Perhaps you have never remarked that their eyes are precisely similar, and they are those of Catherine Earnshaw. The present Catherine has no other likeness to her, except a breadth of forehead and a certain arch of the nostril that makes her appear rather haughty, whether she will or not. With Hareton the resemblance is carried farther. It is singular at all times. Then it was particularly striking, because his senses were alert, and his mental faculties wakened to unwonted activity. I suppose this resemblance disarmed Mr. Heathcliff. He walked to the hearth in an evident agitation, but it quickly subsided as he looked at the young man, or I should say, altered its character, for it was there yet. He took the book from his hand and glanced at the open page, then returned it without any observation, merely signing Catherine away. Her companion lingered very little behind her, and I was about to depart also, but he bid me to sit still. "It is a poor conclusion, is it not?" he observed, having brooded a while on the scene that he had just witnessed. "An absurd termination to my violent exertions. I get levers and matlocks to demolish the two houses, and train myself to be capable of working like Hercules, and when everything is ready and in my power, I find the will to lift a slate of either roof has vanished. My old enemies have not beaten me. Now would be the precise time to revenge myself on their representatives. I could do it, and none could hinder me so. But where is the use? I don't care for striking. I can't take the trouble to raise my hand. That sounds as if I had been laboring the whole time, only to exhibit a fine trait of magnanimity. It is far from being the case. I have lost the faculty of enjoying their destruction, and I am too idle to destroy for nothing. Nellie, there is a strange approaching. I am in its shadow at present. I take so little interest in my daily life that I hardly remember to eat and drink. Those two have left the room, are the only objects which retain a distinct material appearance to me, and that appearance causes me pain, amounting to agony. About her I won't speak, and I don't desire to think, but I earnestly wish she were invisible. Her presence evokes only madness. He moves me differently, and yet, if I could do without seeming insane, I'd never see him again. You'll perhaps think me rather inclined to become so, he added, making an effort to smile. If I try to describe the thousand forms of past associations and ideas he awakens or embodies, you'll not talk of what I tell, and my mind is so eternally secluded in itself, even in its tempting, at last, to turn it out to another. 5 minutes ago, Hareton seemed to be the personification of my youth, not a human being. I felt to him in such a variety of ways that it would have been impossible to have accosted him rationally. In the first place, his startling likeness to Catherine connected him fearfully with her. That, however, which you may suppose the most potent to arrest my imagination, is actually the least. For what is not connected to her to me, and what does not recall her? I cannot look down to this floor, but her features are shaped on the flags, and in every cloud, in every tree, and filling the air at night and caught by glimpses in every object. By day I am surrounded with her image, the most ordinary faces of men and women. My own features mock me with a resemblance. The entire world is a dreadful collection of memoranda that she did exist, and that I have lost her. Well, Hareton's aspect was the ghost of my immortal love, of my wild endeavors to hold my right, my degradation, my pride, my happiness, and my anguish. But it is frenzy to repeat these thoughts to you, only it will let you know why, with a reluctance to be always alone, his society is no benefit rather than an aggravation of the constant torment that I suffer, and it partly contributes to render me regardless how he and his cousin go on together. I can give them no attention, not any more. "But what do you mean by a change, Mr. Heathcliff?" I said, alarmed at his manner, though he was neither in danger of losing his senses nor dying, according to my judgment. He was quite strong and healthy, and as his reason from childhood, he had a delight in dwelling on the dark things and entertaining odd fancies. He might have had a monomania on the subject of his departed idol, but on every other point his wits were as sound as mine. "I shall not know that till it comes," he said. "I'm only half conscious of it now." "You have no feeling of illness, do you?" I asked. "No, Nellie, I have not," he answered. "Then what are you afraid of? Is it death?" I pursued. "Afraid? No," he replied. "I have neither a fear nor a presentiment, nor a hope of death. Why should I? With my hard constitution and temperate mode of living, and unperilous occupations, I ought to, and probably shall remain above ground, till there is scarcely a black hair on my head. And yet I cannot continue in this condition. I have to remind myself to breathe, almost to remind my heart to beat, and it is like bending back a stiff spring. It is by compulsion that I do the slightest act, not prompted by one thought and by one compulsion, that I notice anything alive or dead which is not associated with one universal idea. I have a single wish, and my whole being and faculties are yearning to attain it. They have yearned towards it for so long and so unwaveringly that I am convinced that it will be reached and soon. Because it has devoured my existence, I am swallowed in the anticipation of its fulfillment. My confessions have not relieved me, but they may account for some otherwise unaccountable phrases of humor which I show. O God, it is a long fight, and I wish it were over. He began to pace the room, muttering terrible things to himself, till I was inclined to believe that he said Joseph did, that conscience had turned his heart to an unearthly hell. I wondered greatly how it would end. Though he seldom before had revealed his state of mind, even by looks, it was his habitual mood. I had no doubt that he asserted it himself, but not a soul, from his general bearing, would have conjectured the fact. You did not when you saw him, Mr. Lockwood, and at the period of which I speak, he was just the same as then, only fonder of continued solitude, and perhaps still laconic in company. Chapter 34. For some days after that evening, Mr. Heathcliff shunned meeting us at meals. Yet he would not consent formally to exclude Hareton and Cathy. He had an aversion to yielding so completely to his feelings, choosing rather to absent himself, and eating once in 24 hours seemed sufficient sustenance for him. One night after the family were in bed, I heard him go downstairs, and out the front door. I did not hear him re-enter, and in the morning I found that he was still away. We were in April then. The weather was sweet and warm. The grass was green as showers and sun could make it, and the 2 dwarf apple trees near the southern wall were in full bloom. After breakfast, Catherine insisted on my bringing a chair and sitting with my work under the fir trees at the end of the house, and she beguiled Hareton, who had perfectly recovered from his accident, to dig and arrange her little garden, which was shifted to that corner by the influence of Joseph's complaints. I was comfortably reveling in the spring fragrance around and the beautiful soft blue overhead, when my young lady, who had run down near the gate to procure some primrose roots for a border, returned only half laden and informed us that Mr. Heathcliff was coming in. "And he spoke to me," she added with a perplexed countenance. "Well, what did he say?" asked Hareton. "He told me to be gone as fast as I could," she answered, "but he looked so different from his usual look that I stopped a moment to stare at him." "How?" he inquired. "Why, he was almost bright and cheerful. No, almost nothing. Very, very much excited and wild and glad," she replied. "Night stalking amuses him, then," I remarked, affecting a careless manner, in reality as surprised as she was, and anxious to ascertain the truth of her statement. For to see the master looking glad would not be an everyday spectacle. I framed an excuse to go on in. Heathcliff stood at the open door. He was pale and he trembled, yet certainly he had a strange joyful glitter in his eyes that altered the aspect of his whole face. "Will you have some breakfast?" I said. "You must be hungry, rambling about all night." I wanted to discover where he had been, but I did not like to ask directly. "No, I am not hungry," he answered, averting his head, and speaking rather contemptuously, as if he guessed that I was trying to divine the occasion of his good humor. I felt perplexed. I didn't know whether it were not a proper opportunity to offer a bit of admonition. "I don't think it's right to wander outdoors," I observed, "instead of being in bed. It is not wise, at any rate, this moist season and all. I dare you say you'll catch a bad cold or a fever, if you have something the matter with you now. Nothing but what I can bear, he replied, and with the greatest pleasure, provided you'll leave me alone. Get in and don't annoy me. I obeyed, and in passing I noticed that he breathed as fast as a cat. Yes, I reflected to myself, we shall have a fit of illness. Oh, I cannot conceive what he has been doing. That noon he sat down to dinner with us, and received a heaped-up plate from my hands, as if he intended to make amends for previous fasting. I've neither cold nor fever, Nellie, he remarked in allusion to my morning speech, and I'm ready to do justice to the food you give me. He looked at the knife and the fork, and was going to commence eating, when the inclination appeared to be becoming suddenly extinct. He laid them on the table and looked eagerly towards the window, then rose and went out. We saw him walking to and fro in the garden while we concluded our meal, and Earnshaw said that he'd go and ask why he would not dine. He thought we had grieved him some way. Well, is he coming? Cried Catherine when her cousin returned. Nay, he answered, but he's not angry. He seemed rare and pleased indeed, only I made him impatient by speaking to him twice, and then he bid me off to you. He wondered how I could want the company of anybody else. I set his plate to keep warm on the fender, and after an hour or two he re-entered, when the room was clear and in no degree calmer. The same unnatural, it was unnatural, the appearance of joy under his black brows, the same bloodless hue, and his teeth visible, now and then, in a kind of smile. His frame was shivering, not as one shivers with chill or weakness, but as a tight stretched cord vibrates, a strong thrilling, rather than trembling. I will ask what is the matter, I thought, or should I even? And then I exclaimed, Have you heard any good news, Mr. Heathcliff? You look uncommonly animated. Where should good news come from to me? He said. I'm animated with hunger, and seemingly I must not eat. Well, your dinner is here, I returned. Why don't you get it? I don't want it now, he muttered hastily. I'll wait till supper, and Nellie, once for all, let me beg you to warn Hareton and the other away from me. I wish to be troubled by nobody. I wish to have this place to myself. Is there some reason for this banishment? I inquired. Tell me, why are you so queer, Mr. Heathcliff? Where were you last night? I'm not putting the question through idle curiosity, but... You are putting the question through very idle curiosity, he interrupted with a laugh. Yet I'll answer it. Oh, last night I was on the threshold of hell. Today I am within sight of my heaven. I have my eyes on it, hardly 3 feet to sever me, and now you'd better go. You'd neither see nor hear anything to frighten you, if you refrain from prying. Having swept the hearth and wiped the table, I departed more perplexed than ever. He did not quit the house again that afternoon, and no one intruded on his solitude till 8 o'clock at night. I deemed it proper, though unsummoned, to carry a candle and his supper to him. He was leaning against the ledge, but not looking out. His face was turned to the interior gloom. The fire had smoldered to ashes, and the room was filled with the damp, mild air of a cloudy evening, and so still that not only the murmur of the beck down in Gimmerton was distinguishable, but its ripples and its gurgling over the pebbles or through the large stones which it could not recover. I uttered an ejaculation of discontent at seeing the dismal grate, and commenced shutting the casements one after another till I came to his. Must I close this? I asked, in order to rouse him, for he would not stir. The light flashed on his features as I spoke. Oh, Mr. Lockwood, I cannot express what terrible start I got by the momentary view. Those deep black eyes, that smile and ghastly paleness. It appeared to me not Mr. Heathcliff, but a goblin, and in my terror I let the candle bend towards the wall, and it left me in darkness. Yes, close it, he replied in his familiar voice. There, that is pure awkwardness. Did you chance to hold the candle horizontally? Be quick and bring another. I hurried out in a foolish state of dread and said to Joseph, The master wishes for you to take him a light and rekindle the fire. For I dared not go in myself again just then. Joseph rattled some fire into the shovel and went, but he brought it back immediately with the supper tray in hand, explaining that Mr. Heathcliff was going to bed, and he wanted nothing to eat until morning. We heard him mount the stairs directly. He did not proceed to his ordinary chamber, but turned into that with the paneled bed, its window, as I had mentioned before. It was wide enough for anybody to get through, and it struck me that he plotted another midnight excursion, which he had rather we no suspicion of. Is he a ghoul or a vampire? I mused. I had read of such hideous incarnate demons, and then I set myself to reflect on how I had tended him in his infancy, and watched him grow to youth, and followed him almost through the whole course, and what absurd nonsense it was to yield to that sense of horror. But where do you think he come from? The little dark thing, harboured by a good man to his bane? I muttered the suspicion, and I dozed into unconsciousness, and I began, half dreaming, to weary myself with imagining some fit parentage for him, and repeating my waking meditations. I tracked his existence over again with a grim variation. At last, picturing his death and funeral, of which all I can remember is being exceedingly vexed at having the task of dictating an inscription for his monument, and consulting the sexton about it, and, as he had no surname, and we could not tell his age, we were obliged to content ourselves with the single word, Heathcliff. And that came true, we were. If you enter the kirkyard, you'll read his headstone, only that, and the date of his death. Dawn restored me to common sense. I rose and went into the garden as soon as I could, to ascertain if there were any more footmarks under his window. There were none. Ah, he has stayed at home, I thought, and he'll be all right today. I prepared breakfast for the household, as was my usual custom, but told Hareton and Catherine to get theirs ere the master come down, for he lay late. They preferred taking it outdoors anyway, and sitting under the trees, and I let a little table to accommodate them. On my re-entrance I found Mr. Heathcliff below. He and Joseph were conversing about some farming business. He gave clear, minute directions concerning the matter discussed, but he spoke rapidly and turned his head continually aside, and had the same excited expression, even more exaggerated. When Joseph quitted the room, he took his seat in the place where he was generally chosen, and I put a basin of coffee before him. He drew it nearer and then rested his arms on the table and looked at the opposite wall, as I suppose surveying one particular portion up and down, with glittering, restless eyes, and with such eager interest that he stopped breathing, and during a half-minute together. "Come now," I exclaimed, pushing some bread against his hand. "Eat and drink that while it's hot. It has been a-waiting near an hour." And he didn't notice me, and yet he smiled. I'd rather have seen him gnash his teeth than smile so. "Mr. Heathcliff! Master!" I cried. "Don't for God's sake stare as if you saw an unearthly vision." "Don't for God's sake shout so loud," he replied. "Turn round and tell me, are we by ourselves?" And then he said, "Perhaps." With a sweep of his hand, he cleared a vacant space in front among the breakfast things and leaned forward to gaze more at his ease. Now I perceived that he was not looking at the wall, for when I regarded him alone, it seemed exactly that he gazed at something within 2 yards' distance. and whatever it was, it communicated, apparently, both pleasure and pain. In exquisite extremes, at last, the anguished yet raptured expression of his countenance suggested the idea. The fancied object was not fixed either. His eyes pursued it with unwearied vigilance, and even in speaking to me, were never weaned away. I vainly reminded him of his protracted abstinence from his food. If he stirred to touch anything in compliance with my entreaties, if he stretched his hand out to get a piece of bread, his fingers clenched before they reached it and remained on the table, forgetful of their aim. I sat, a model of patience, trying to attract his absorbed attention from its engrossing speculation, till he grew irritable and got up asking why I would not allow him to have his own time in taking his meals, and saying that on the next occasion that I needn't wait, that I might set the things down and go. Having uttered these words, he left the house, slowly sauntering down the garden path, and disappeared through the gate. The hours crept anxiously by. Another evening came, and I did not retire to rest till late, and when I did, I could not sleep. He returned after midnight, and instead of going to bed, shut himself into the room beneath. I listened and tossed about, and finally, dressed and descended. It was too irksome to lie up there, harassing my brain with 100 idle misgivings. I distinguished Mr. Heathcliff's step, restlessly measuring the floor, and he frequently broke the silence by a deep inspiration resembling a groan. He muttered detached words also. The only one I could catch was the name Catherine, coupled with some wild term of endearment or suffering, and spoken as if one would speak to a person present, low and earnest, and wrung from the depth of his soul. I had not courage to walk straight into the apartment, but I desired to divert him from his reverie, and therefore fell foul of the kitchen fire, stirred it, and began to scrape the cinders. It drew him forth sooner than I expected. He opened the door immediately and said, "Nellie, come here. Is it morning? Come in with your light." "It is striking 4, I answered. "You want a candle to take upstairs? You might have to light one at this fire." "No, I don't wish to go upstairs," he said. "Come in and kindle me a fire, and do nothing there is to do about the room." "I must blow the coals red first before I can carry any," I replied, getting a chair and the bellows. He roamed to and fro in the meantime, in a state approaching distraction, his heavy sighs succeeding each other so thick as to leave no space for common breathing between. "When day breaks, I'll send for Green," he said. "I wish to make some legal inquiries of him while I can bestow a thought on those matters, and while I can act calmly. I have not written my will yet, and how to leave my property I cannot determine. I wish I could annihilate it from the face of the earth." "I would not talk so, Mr. Heathcliff," I interposed. "Let your will be a while. You'll be spared to repent of many of your injustices yet. I never expected that your nerves would be so disordered as they are at present. Marvellously so, however, and almost entirely through your own fault. The way you've been passed up these 3 last days might knock up a Titan. Do take some food and some repose. You need only look at yourself in a glass to see how you require both. Your cheeks are hollow, and your eyes are bloodshot, like a person starving with hunger and going blind with loss of sleep." "It is not my fault that I cannot eat or rest," he replied. "I assure you that it is through no settled designs. I'll do both as soon as I possibly can, but you might as well bid a man struggling in water rest within arm's length of a shore. I must reach it first, and then I'll rest. Well, never mind, Mr. Green. As to repenting of my injustices, I've done no injustice, and I repent of nothing. I'm too happy, and yet I am not happy enough. My soul's bliss kills my body, but does not justify or satisfy itself. Happy master, I cried. Strange happiness if you would hear me without being angry. I might offer some advice that might make you happier. Oh, and what is that? He asked. Give it. Well, are aware, Mr. Heathcliff, I said, that from the time you were 13 years old, you have lived a selfish, unchristian life, and probably had a Bible been in your hands during that all period. You must have forgotten the contents of the book, and you may not have space to search for it now. Could it be hurtful to send for some minister of any denomination? It does not matter which, to explain it, and how far you are, and how you erred from its precepts, and how unfit you will be for its heaven, unless a change takes place before you die. I'd rather be obliged than angry, Nelly, he said, for you remind me of the manor that I desire to be buried in, and it is carried to the churchyard. In the evening, you and Hareton may, if you please, accompany me, and mind particularly to notice that the sexton obeys my directions concerning the 2 coffins. No minister need come, nor need anything be said over me. I tell you, I have nearly attained my heaven, and that of others is altogether unvalued and uncoveted by me. And supposing you preserved in your obstinate fast, and died by that means, and they refused to bury you in the precincts of the kirk, I said, shocked at his godless indifference, how would you like it? They won't do that, he replied. If they did, you must have me removed secretly, and if you neglect it, you shall prove practically that the dead are not annihilated. As soon as he heard the other members of the family stirring, he retired to his den, and I breathed freer. But in the afternoon, while Joseph and Hareton were at their work, he came into the kitchen again, and with a wild look bid me to come and sit in the house. He wanted somebody with him. I declined, telling him plainly that his strange talk and manner frightened me, and that I had neither the nerve nor the will to believe his companion alone. I believe you think me a fiend, he said with his dismal laugh. Something too horrible to live under a decent roof. Then turning to Catherine, who was there, and who drew behind me at his approach, he added, half sneeringly, Will you come, Chuck? I'll not hurt you. Oh, no, not you. I've made myself worse than the devil. Well, there is one who won't shrink from my company. By God, she's restless. Oh, damn it. It's unutterably too much for flesh and blood to bear, even mine. He solicited the society of no one more. At dusk he went into his chamber. Through the whole night and far into the morning we heard him groaning and murmuring to himself. Hareton was anxious to enter, but I bid him fetch Mr. Kenneth, and he should go in to see him. When he came, I requested admittance and tried to open the door. I found it locked, and Heathcliff bid us to be damned. He was better, and that he would be left alone, so the doctor went away. The following evening was very wet. Indeed, it poured down till day dawn, and as I took my morning walk around the house, I observed the master's window swinging open, and the rain driving straight in. He cannot be in bed, I thought to myself. Those showers would drench him through. He must either be up or out, but I'll make no more ado. I'll go boldly and look, I thought. Having succeeded in obtaining entrance with another key, I ran to unclose the panels, for the chamber was vacant. Quickly pushing them aside, I peeped in. Mr. Heathcliff was there, laid on his back. His eyes met mine, so keen and fierce I started, and then he seemed to smile. I could not think him dead, but his face and throat were washed with rain, the bedclothes dripped, and he was perfectly still. The lattice flapping to and fro had grazed one hand that rested on the sill. No blood trickled from the broken skin, and when I put my fingers to it, I could doubt no more that he was dead and stark. I hasped the window. I combed his black long hair from his forehead. I tried to close his eyes to extinguish, if possible, that frightful, lifelike gaze of exultation before anyone else beheld it. They would not shut. They seemed to sneer at my attempts, and his parted lips, and his white teeth sneered too. Taken with another fit of cowardice, I cried for Joseph, and Joseph shuffled up and made a noise, but resolutely refused to meddle with him. "The devil's a herd of with his soul," he cried, "and he ma having the carcassin to bargain for. Ech, what a wicked— Oh, look, he's grinning in death." And the old sinner grinned in mockery. I thought he intended to cut a caper around the bed, but suddenly composing himself, he fell to his knees and raised his hands and returned thanks to the lawful master, and the ancient stock were restored to their rights. I felt stunned by the awful event, and my memory unavoidably reoccurred to former times with a sort of oppressive sadness. But poor Hareton, the most wronged, was the only one that really suffered much. He sat by the corpse all night, weeping in bitter earnest. He pressed its hand and kissed the sarcastic, savage face that everyone else shrank from contemplating, and bemoaned him with the strong grief which springs naturally from a generous heart, though it be tough as tempered steel. Kenneth was perplexed to pronounce what disorder the master had died from. I concealed the fact of his having swallowed nothing for 4 days, fearing that it might lead to trouble, and then I am persuaded that he did not abstain on purpose. It was the consequence of his strange illness, not the cause. We buried him, to the scandal of the whole neighborhood, as he had wished. Earnshaw and I, the sexton, and 6 men carried the coffin, and comprehended the whole attendance. The 6 men departed when they had let it down into the grave, and we stayed to see it covered. Hareton, with his streaming face, dug green sods and laid them over the brown mold himself. At present it was smooth and verdant as its companions' mounds, and I hope its tenant sleeps soundly. But the country folks, if you ask them, would swear on their Bible that he walks. There are those who speak to having met him near the church, and on the moor, and even within this house. Idle tales, you'll say, and so I say. Yet that old man by the kitchen fire affirms that he has seen 2 or 3 of them looking out of his chamber window on every rainy night since his death, and an odd thing happened to me about a month ago. I was going to the Grange one evening, a dark evening, threatening thunder, and just at the turn of the heights I encountered a little boy with a sheep and 2 lambs before him. He was crying terribly, and I suppose the lambs were skittish and would not be guided. "What is the matter, my little man?" I asked. "They's Heathcliffs and a woman yonder under nab," he blubbered, "and, I don't pass 'em." I saw nothing, but neither the sheep nor he would go on, so I bid him to take the road lower down. He probably raised the phantoms from his thinking, as he traversed the moors alone, on the nonsense that he had heard from his parents and companions. Still, I don't like being out in the dark now, and I don't like being left by myself in this grim house. I cannot help it. I shall be glad when they leave it and shift to the Grange." "Ah, they are going to the Grange, then," said Mr. Lockwood. "Yes," answered Mrs. Dean, "as soon as they are married, and that will be on New Year's Day." "And who will live here, then?" "Why, Joseph will take care of the house, and perhaps a lad to keep him company. They will live in the kitchen, and the rest will be shut up." "For the use of such ghosts as choose to inhabit it," said Mr. Lockwood. "No, Mr. Lockwood," said Nellie, shaking her head. "I believe that the dead are at peace, but it is not right to speak of them with levity." At the moment the garden gate swung to, the ramblers were returning. "Seems that they are afraid of nothing," Mr. Lockwood grumbled, watching their approach through the window. Together they would brave Satan and all his legions. As they stepped onto the door-stones and halted to take a last look at the moor, or more correctly at each other by her light, I felt irresistibly impelled to escape them again, and pressing a remembrance into the hand of Mrs. Dean, and disregarding her expostulations at my rudeness, I vanished through the kitchen as they opened the house door, and so should have confirmed Joseph in his opinion of my fellow servants' gay indiscretions. Had not fortunately recognized me for a respectable character by the sweet ring of a sovereign at his feet. My, my walk home was lengthened by a diversion in the direction of the kirk. When beneath its walls I perceived decay and had made progress even in 7 months, many a window showed black gaps and deprived of glass, and slates jutted off here and there, beyond the right line of the roof to be gradually worked off in a coming autumn storm. I sought and soon discovered that the 3 headstones on the slope next to the moor, the middle one gray and half buried in the heath, Edgar Linton's only harmonized by the turf, and the moss creeping up its foot, Heathcliff still bare. I lingered round them under the benign sky, watching the moths fluttering among the heath and the harebells, listening to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. And that is the end of Wuthering Heights. Well, that was an experience. I kind of feel like Mr. Heathcliff was not a great person. I did not like him at all. I feel like he made things terrible for everybody. And it was just kind of sad. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this book. Like, do I hate it? No. Do I love it? No. Like, I don't know. I feel kind of indifferent about it. It's great that, Emily Bronte, it kind of explored, what felt like the common people in a sense, and kind of illnesses and diseases of the day. And I think it's pretty prominent here that there's a lot of mental illness involved in this story and a lot of issues that people had. But I also feel like Mr. Heathcliff went too far in some instances. Like, he could have done better. He could have moved on with his life and found somebody else. But he was so drawn to this one woman that he was hell-bent on basically destroying her entire family. And that basically felt like what that was, because he couldn't have her. So it felt like he was denied in a way. So he was like, I'm going to seek my revengeance and destroy all of you. So I don't know. I feel like I kind of hate this book, but then I also understand why people love it. But I do hate it. I can't stand Mr. Heathcliff. He upsets me so. But anyway, thank you to those of you who have hung out with me on this journey and, being with me while I finish and read through Wuthering Heights. It definitely was an experience, and I'm glad to have experienced it with all of you. And I hope you also enjoyed hanging out with me and listening to Wuthering Heights. Please feel free to tell me in the comments below what you think. And, if you did like listening to me read, I am going to be reading some other books in the future. So please feel free to subscribe, and follow. I do stream pretty regularly. And tomorrow we'll be picking up our next book to start our next stream for our Goodnight reading series. So yeah, until then, I hope you all stay safe and stay geeky as always. And I look forward to